Okay, just a second, please. I'll call to order the Wilsonville City Council meeting for April 19th, 2021 at 7:14 p.m. I will ask the city recorder to do a roll call, please.
Councillor Linville?
Here.
Councillor West?
Here.
Council President Aukervall?
Here.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Here.
And Councillor Lehan is excused.
Councilors, will you mute your mics, and the city manager will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I have a motion on order of agenda? Can you hear me? Oh, Councilor Aukervall, Council President Aukervall.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the order of agenda.
Do I have a second?
Your Honor, I'll second the motion.
Motion has been moved and seconded to approve the order of agenda. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you. For mayor's business, I want to let everyone know that our next city council meeting will be May 3rd, 2021. And I have just a few things to share about things that have been going on in my world, and we'll hear from the mayor, and our councilors have also been busy. We'll be hearing from them later. One thing that we learned just this week is that Business Oregon is going to this is regarding COVID relief. We had what I think is some really good news. Business Oregon announced that they will open the second round of a grant program for building owners to cover outstanding lease payments from small business tenants. And there may be a press release on that with more detail on the city website, but I know that business owners have had a lot of difficulties with the continuance of the pandemic, and we were glad to see that come through. Today I had a really good opportunity to attend a meeting of Greater Portland Inc. And Greater Portland Inc. is an organization that Wilsonville and other cities have been members of for a number of years to help with attracting business investment in the area. And I think we'll be hearing more about this, but they're updating their strategic vision, and I think they will be a good partner for us going forward. We've been having a lot of, we've all been reading probably about all the activities in the legislature. I won't try to summarize any of that, but I will say that we continue to hear good movement about getting funding for the Boone Bridge. There's still a lot to be done there, but I appreciate the progress that is making. Regarding transportation, there's also been a lot of presentations at the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium. I think Clackamas County commissioners have had presentations, Washington County mayors, about what the how the plans are developing with ODOT regarding House Bill 2017 regarding our transportation, and that is again where the Boone Bridge replacement funds will come from. But within all that discussion is the discussion of congestion pricing and how to manage the congestion and funding for the Abernathy Bridge, the Rose Quarter 217, and also Boone Bridge. But I really encourage everybody to pay attention to this. We'll be having a presentation at the City Council in the near future, I'm sure, to hear about how this will work. The general idea is we need to have a way to pay for these incredibly expensive projects and the idea of some form of tolling, congestion pricing is coming out of the legislature. And so what are the best ways to make that work for us? That's coming out of the House Bill 2017. I hear the planning is looking at being the best in the nation and making that the most equitable solution that our state can get. And so I'm really interested in continuing to pay attention to that. Concerns that lots of people have described include managing diversionary traffic. If there is a tolling or a congestion pricing necessary to manage traffic, how can funding be developed to address road improvements that might be needed on nearby roads? How can we address the equitable distribution of cost so that people who must travel on those roads have an equitable way to manage that cost? And really what it's doing is there's going to be a solution here that basically pays for our roads. There's a lot more to learn, but I think I will talk to City Manager Brian Cosgrove about having a presentation for our City Council sometime soon so we can discuss that. So I also wanted to segue to a completely different topic right now, and I had something I wanted to share with everyone that one of our friends of our city and our city volunteers recently passed away, and I just wanted to acknowledge our friend Jamie Arbin recently passed away and how much we appreciated her participating in our city. She did the entire Wilsonville Citizen Academy program and was quite active and had recently joined the Development Review Board. So I want to think of her family and let them know that we're thinking about her, and I appreciated getting to know her and her involvement in our city. Thank you. Today, I have actually, moving to another subject, we have 3 proclamations today. And the first one is the Earth Day Proclamation. And Mr. Cosgrove, do we have a staff member who's going to do a presentation?
We do. I believe Carrie Rappold, Natural Resource Manager, is in the virtual lobby waiting to be recognized.
Okay, Mr. Rappold.
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I am here. Virtually, I made it. And so it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight to recognize Earth Day 2021. And I'm going to share my screen and bring up a short presentation. And then I would ask the mayor to read the proclamation when I'm done with this. So here we go. So yes, it's recognizing Earth Day 2021. Last year was actually the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, so we're into the next 50 years, which is great to see. And certainly since last Earth Day in 2020, there's been a couple of events that have really been, challenging for the environment and for the people that live in the state. And if you think back to September of last year, many of these names were, something that we were speaking on a daily basis, whether it was the Beachy Creek fire, the Lion's Head fire, the Riverside. Over 1 million acres burned within Oregon. And you probably remember those smoky, hazy skies, those unreal colors. And then approximately 40,000 people had to be evacuated. So a short 5 months later, though, we're dealing with ice. And in February, we had, as you know, the big ice storm. And so we went from one end of the spectrum to the other. And, caused significant damage to trees within the community, to structures, other things. Our crew spent a lot of time working on this issue and trying to get things cleaned up, cutting those trees down, people within our community removing the debris. And then, as you might recall, we had this enormous site over at the commuter rail station parking area. So lots of debris and lots of chips. So just a way of remembering where we've come in the last year, but really what I want to focus on very briefly is just the outstanding natural beauty that we have in Oregon and the reasons we have every day to celebrate the fact that we have this and that we get the pleasure of living here, whether it's in the Willamette Valley or within the Columbia River Gorge or within Eastern Oregon, the Cascades. And certainly we wouldn't want to forget about the Oregon coast and its wonderful beauty. I was just there this past weekend, and I have to say the weather was just perfect. So I think, we have a lot of reasons to celebrate the wonderful state and the wonderful world that we live in. And I think it's a great day to celebrate Earth Day. So if the mayor is so inclined, I would appreciate if she might be able to read the proclamation.
Yes, I will. Whereas this year marks the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, which began in 1970 as a long-term endeavor to make the planet clean and healthy and sustainable, and whereas Earth Day is celebrated around the globe by people of all backgrounds, faiths, and nationalities, and whereas the community members of all ages can contribute to building a healthy society through the wise use of and protection of our natural resources, including our air, water, and natural habitats. And whereas Wilsonville has always recognized the importance of protecting, conserving, and restoring our natural resources, thus creating a livable and vibrant community. Now, therefore, I, Julie Fitzgerald, Mayor of Wilsonville, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2021 as Earth Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And
Members of the Council.
Thank you, Carrie. And we will go to Bike Month presentation, please. And Mr. Cosgrove, I have a battery problem with my computer, so I'll let you carry on while I fix that.
Okay, we'll go ahead and cue up the staff presentation. There is no staff presentation. Would you like me to read the proclamation for you, Mayor?
Yes, I would, please.
Okay. City of Wilsonville proclamation declaring May as Bike Month. Whereas for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of the lives of most Americans. And whereas today millions of Americans engage in bicycling because it is a viable and environmentally sound form of transportation, an excellent form of fitness, and provides quality family recreation. And whereas the education of cyclists and motorists as to the proper and safe operation of bicycles is important to ensure the safety and comfort of all users. And whereas ease of access for pedestrians and cyclists is crucial to ensuring their safety and encourages more active transportation. And whereas the City of Wilsonville South Metro Area Regional Transit, AKA SMART, works to reduce our carbon footprint by promoting bicycle use in an effort to lessen the number of cars on the road. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists and independent bicyclists throughout Oregon are promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation, safety, and education to prevent crashes, injuries, and fatalities for all. Now, therefore, she, Julie Fitzgerald, Mayor of the City of Wilsonville, does hereby proclaim May 2021 as Bike Month, and she encourages all Wilsonville residents to ride bicycles for fun and fitness, and for everyone to recognize the importance of bicycle safety and education.
Thank you, Manager Cosgrove. I did not realize the plug to my computer had become disconnected, so you got me through it. And I'm not trying to avoid Bike Month. I love bike riding, and I completely support it.
I had to win on the language a little bit, so thank you for your suggestion.
Thank you. And so now I would like to introduce our city staff to give a presentation, Dan Carlson, regarding Building Safety Month.
All right, good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald and members of City Council. I don't have a formal presentation for you. It's just the signing of the proclamation. But for the members of the audience, my name is Dan Carlson, and I serve as the city's building official. Thank you for reading and signing this proclamation. This proclamation is really an important element in promoting Building Safety Month in May for us. It's also important in continuing our good outreach efforts in Wilsonville to citizens in promoting building safety and to encouraging efforts to improve our built environment. not just getting permits for construction projects, but the overall safety of the spaces where we live, work, and play. During COVID-19, which we're all in, we are spending an inordinate amount of time in buildings. And so during the month of May, we have a different theme for each week. The first week is themed around energy efficiency, which is a big deal in our building codes. We also are themed in week 2 around training the next generation. Many of you know that I serve as an adjunct instructor at Chemeketa Community College, so this week is going to be near and dear to my heart. Week 3 is going to center around water safety, and week 4 is around disaster preparedness. You'll see the building division engage in social media and other outreach efforts through the month along the lines of those themes. And lastly, there are a lot of individuals in various roles in the development process. One of those groups is you, as our city council. I'd like to acknowledge your efforts as leaders and decision makers and say that I appreciate greatly the time and the effort that you take to understand what are often very technically complex issues, and in order to provide your perspective so that we collectively can make good, solid decisions for our community. So thank you again for proclaiming May 2021 as Building Safety Month.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. So I'm very glad to read the proclamation for Building Safety Month, May 2021, for City of Wilsonville. The community members of Wilsonville spend considerable time at home, at school, work, worship, and play in buildings, and our city places a high value on ensuring buildings are safe for the protection of its community members from disasters such as fire, windstorms, earthquakes, landslides, floods, and other natural hazards. And whereas Prevent, Prepare, Protect, Building Code Saves, the national theme for Building Safety Month, encourages community members to raise awareness of the importance of building and maintaining safe structures, fire prevention, disaster mitigation, water conservation, ADA accessibility, energy efficiency, alternative energy, and new technologies in the construction industry. And whereas the effective administration of building safety codes affects our community and gives us confidence that our structures are safe and sound. And whereas our confidence is achieved through the devotion of professional building inspectors, fire prevention officers, design professionals, and licensed contractors who work year-round to ensure the construction of safe, durable, and sustainable buildings. And whereas, in observance of Building Safety Month, Wilsonville community members are reminded about the benefits of safe and sustainable spaces, whether at home, at work, or places where we gather in our communities. Now, therefore, I, Julie Fitzgerald, Mayor of the City of Wilsonville, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2021 as Building Safety Month, and I encourage all Wilsonville residents to join communities across America with participation in Building Safety Month activities. Dated 19 April 2021. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Carlson, and we're now ready to move to our communications section of our agenda. And I would like to introduce, we're going to hear a report from Clackamas County Sheriff's Clackamas County Sheriff's Office about the public safety levy. And I would like to introduce Clackamas, our Under Sheriff, Mayor Mike Copenhaver, and he is joined in the presentation by Chief Deputy Jesse Ashby and our Police Chief for Wilsonville, Rob Werps. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And good evening, everyone, Council. And Councilor Ackerbaugh, I love your traffic safety message. That's always important for us. I'm going to make this as quick as I can. I received a couple questions about the March data from Councilor Ackerbaugh, and I just wanted to touch on those real quickly, and then I'll introduce these two fine gentlemen who are going to talk a little bit about the public safety levy that we are putting out this year. So there was a notable increase in calls compared to last March. And we believe, like, I don't have scientific research to help me with this, so I have to do a lot of anecdotal work. I'm sure everybody can understand. And we don't generate the calls, we respond to them. But we did see a significant increase from last March, and we believe that to be due to the lockdown when COVID first reared its ugly head earlier last year. And so we saw immediately, could tell that our discretionary time increased. We saw a lot less call loads. There's just a lot less activity in the middle of the night and so forth. So that's what we attribute that downtick in calls for. This year moving forward, however, even this January, we immediately started to move back to call loads similar to pre-COVID times. So our demand for service is pretty much back to what we normally see. And then a couple other things. There was some increases in behavioral health calls. Again, anecdotally, we chalk that up to, I mean, listen, this is very hard on all of us. This pandemic's been very difficult. You turn on the news, there's death counters and all this really scary stuff. Puts us all into unfamiliar territory. And for those who have already dealing with mental health issues, the isolation, the anxiety that this COVID causes, we believe it causes a big uptick in the behavioral health calls we go to. We work closely with our behavioral health unit, BHU, and these are the clinicians that are trained and educated in dealing with mental health crisis. So we work closely with them and respond the best of our ability to all those calls as we get them. On a much lighter note, we also seen, as was asked, parking citations, parking complaints were up. We've been going to those. There are some isolated areas that those are coming up in, but we have our traffic concern team. We're working together on, we were also covering for the code enforcement officer. There was a kind of a lull where one of them left employment here and we've got a new one. So police kind of had to carry some of the load that code enforcement's been helping us with. But we have a plan. We work with the traffic concerns team and the new code enforcement guy to address these issues, and we'll keep working through those through the season. And as you can see, I brought some backup with me tonight. So I want to take a moment just to introduce Chief Deputy Ashby, and he'll tell you a little bit more about himself, but he is the operational commander for all of our outward-facing operations, which includes the patrol division, detectives, and also the contract cities. And then we also have Under Sheriff Michael Copenhaver here tonight, and he's the sheriff's number 2. And we'll be talking a little bit tonight about our upcoming public safety levy, answering questions and providing some info in that regard. With that, unless there's any questions about these data points, which I'm happy to discuss in person or on the phone if you have any additional questions, as always, I am going to hand it over to Chief Deputy Ashby.
Hey, thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. Mayor, City Council, thanks for having me on tonight. Back in January 1, Sheriff Brandenburg took over and she tapped me to be her Chief Deputy of Enforcement, like Chief Werp said. So that's been a pretty good, fun role, but it's been a kind of a wild ride for the first 4 months. Like he said, I'm responsible for the patrol division, the investigations division, both contract cities and our training division. So that keeps me pretty busy. When Chief Werps and I were talking, we thought it'd be important to get in front of the City Council, just kind of have a face and a name so you all would know what's going on at the Sheriff's Office. So we wanted to kind of take this opportunity to introduce ourselves, say hello. You know, I'm really lucky to have Chief Werps. He's one of our brightest here at the Sheriff's Office, and I'm sure he takes very good care of you. So that makes me happy and takes one last thing off my plate. Just very briefly, I don't really want to make it about me, but I've been in Clackamas County for 20 years now doing law enforcement. I live here in the county. I'll retire from the Sheriff's Office. So I'm happy and honored to serve for Sheriff Brandenburg. And we really appreciate our relationship with Wilsonville. I think that I get a good sense from Werps that that's reciprocated back. So I think it's a model in partnerships between a sheriff's office and a contract city, as we call it. And I just want to thank you guys for your support. And of course, if there's anything we can ever do for you, we're happy to help you any way we can. And unless anyone has any questions of me, I'm going to turn it over to Under Sheriff Copenhaver to introduce himself. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you. I did have one comment before we go to that presentation. Chief, thank you for your introduction, and also Chief Werps. And yes, I really appreciate that Chief Werps is available for quick phone calls, longer phone calls. You know, I think all of the members of the council are interested in staying informed and educated, and I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I feel I'm getting the idea that we all have been very well listened to, and I feel like we can call on Chief Werps as a resource anytime. So thank you to all of you for that.
Absolutely, and that's our expectation, and I'm glad that he's nailing it. So thank you, Mayor.
Councilor West.
I do have a quick question. It might be, I don't know if it's anecdotal or feels this way, but first of all, thank you guys, gentlemen, for your service. You are much appreciated. Your job is really difficult, especially during these times. And I am really thankful that we have leaders like you watching over our city. Chief Werps has been wonderfully responsive to me. He has had lengthy conversations. I echo everything that Mayor Fitzgerald said, but I have this one question. It feels like that I'm getting more and more texts of more violent or dangerous, or I would say more serious crimes in Wilsonville. Maybe it's just a handful recently, but and I know we're getting updates along the line about what's happened to those, but is there, I know you maybe touched on it, Chief Werps, but it does feel a little more escalated lately since I've been on the council. I don't know if you could, I don't know if it's just COVID, but it just seems, a little more worrisome.
I think, again, I haven't seen any real upticks in violent crime. However, we're just in a sensitive time. Everybody, I think, we all have some anxiety. We're a little on edge. And then a major incident like recently happened where we have this bad guy come into town and commit a stabbing. That has a real impact. And we're also a very small community, so word travels very fast when something big like that happens. And then, we're landing a helicopter in the middle of Wilsonville Road. This has an extraordinary impact on people's day-to-day lives. And so I think that because our community is so small and so connected, that one major incident of this sort really just kind of sets us off a little bit already, and we're already kind of on the edge. But statistically speaking, I'd say we still enjoy a very low crime rate here in Wilsonville, and the major crimes are far and few between of that nature. But when they do come up, it really feels big and significant, and it is.
Thank you, Chief Werps.
And I would just like to echo what Chief Werps said, and then say, and just we all know this, but one of the things I think that really works for this relationship between the sheriff's office and the city of Wilsonville is when you do have a major incident, you might feel small city. I don't think you are, but you have the full weight of the sheriff's office coming to support you, right? You have you have your own detectives, but you also have the sheriff's office homicide detectives. You always have our search and rescue. You have our dive team. You have our SWAT team. Whatever resources the city of Wilsonville has, you have that. You have our pledge to support you guys on whatever you need.
Well, a calm and enjoyable and safe city is what we all want, and knowing that we can depend on our law enforcement to help us maintain that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Chief Deputy Ashby, I'll hand it back to you for your introduction.
Yeah, and so next up is Under Sheriff Mike Copenhaver, and he'll introduce himself and take you through the presentation on the levy.
Great, thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Michael Copenhaver, the Under Sheriff of Clackamas County. I'm a number 2 in command to Sheriff Brandenburg. I'm here at her request, and she is just honored to have the city of Wilsonville as a contract city. I won't get into the relationship because I think it's been very well described. Just a personal anecdote, I've been with the county for about 17 and a half years, and 17 years ago, I started as a deputy in the city of Wilsonville. So I spent my first 3 years as a deputy sheriff serving your community, and it was a really early introduction to those really good partnerships with the city council at the time, an early introduction into community policing, and I literally learned how to be a deputy sheriff in your city and still have incredibly fond memories. So it's always an honor to be back speaking to this group, knowing the good time I had in the city of Wilsonville kind of during my formative years. So I'm going to go through a pretty quick PowerPoint presentation. I was told to keep it short, so I respect the chief, and I will do so. It is about our public safety levy, which is going to voters on Tuesday, May 18th, which is election day. Because I am not an elected official, I cannot advocate one way or the other for or against the levy. So this is an informational presentation on the public safety levy. So God willing, I'm going to share my screen. Does everything look okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. So just really quick, the mission of the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office is very simple. We want to provide public safety services to the people in Clackamas County so they can experience a safe and secure community. We want to keep that really simple that both our citizens and our staff can understand. A quick snapshot of our office: 450 full-time employees, 343 of them are sworn, and a robust civilian personnel group as well that helps us provide these law enforcement services, and to which there's many. Not only our contract cities, which you are one of them, we have the things that Chief Deputy Ashby mentioned that you have the ability to use at a moment's notice that are listed here, including our canines and search and rescue and SWAT detectives, as well as access to our jail, obviously. Our patrol division, these are just the 19 stats I pulled up for you to look at. These are the top 6 crimes we see countywide. That includes in the city of Wilsonville. And they're real livability crimes: the theft and criminal mischief, which is damage to someone else's property, drug crimes, stolen vehicles, burglary, and trespass are the crimes we keep seeing. Again, it's not the violent crime that makes the news, that really affects the community in that really in negative way, but these are livability issues that we are trying to work against as a sheriff's office. We have a robust investigations division here at the sheriff's office. Some agencies do what we call a general assignment detective, where a detective kind of investigates a little bit of everything. We have specialized units. We have enough detectives where we can create specialties in our detective working group. So we have a homicide and violent crimes detective unit. We have a detective unit that's solely focused on child abuse, domestic violence, sex crimes, and financial and property crimes. We also have our own crime scene investigators, or CSI, that come out and document evidence and seize evidence and take photographs on crime scenes. I've spoken in front of this city council. I think there may be 1 or 2 new members, but I've been in front of this group talking about a Safe Place Family Justice Center, which I'm very proud of. It's where I came from right before I was asked to be the undersheriff. It's a public-private partnership to help survivors of domestic violence, sexual violence, human trafficking, stalking, and elder abuse. These are about 10 different agencies, both public and private, all under one roof. So a survivor of a crime like that can come in and talk to a police officer, talk to the district attorney's office, get a restraining order, and get help with housing or food assistance all under one roof in one day. So it's a true, best model for survivors facing, some of the worst times of their life. We have an old, yet effective jail built in 1958, 465 beds at the jail, full medical accreditation, where we do provide medical care to people in the jail. We have 24 on-site nursing staff to deal with any sort of medical issues that come up that can be dealt with in a correctional facility that don't need to be transported to the hospital. We have 1,700 inmates that have been placed on opiate withdrawal protocol, where we're actively trying to help people with their opiate addictions while they're incarcerated. And then a recent 100% compliance rating with the OSSA jail standards group, which we're proud of. 2019 data, almost 15,000 bookings. 26% of adults in custody were prescribed mental health medications. And I think this is interesting because of that 26% that ended up being prescribed mental health medications, only 10.5% reported those needs at intake. So what we're finding is that of the people we bring in, only 10.5% of the folks are reporting mental health needs, and nearly 26% of them end up on mental health medication. So we get someone at intake, but we don't know there's a mental health issue going on, and we find it when they're in our care and custody. We spent over $80,000 on mental health medication in 2019. Then we have our interagency task force, our drug team, which has done work down in the city of Wilsonville. Since 2016, these stats, 600 arrests, almost 20 drug trafficking organizations dismantled, over 250 firearms seized, and then 943 pounds of methamphetamine and fentanyl, and over 100 pounds of heroin seized. It's a very active drug team. Like anyone providing public services nowadays, we are running into challenges. Our population has increased in the county. Our county is becoming more urban, more traffic. We're dealing with a houseless population that's becoming more than we're used to. And as you all know, persons affected by mental health and drug use, our patrol deputies and detectives are running into that more and more, as well as our jail deputies that are responsible for the safety and security of those adults in custody. And we have a lack of treatment facility and other resources to divert people in mental health crisis. We understand as a law enforcement system that someone suffering from a mental health crisis does not belong in jail. We, as an operator of a jail, we understand that's not where the community wants folks suffering from mental health issues, and it's not where we want these folks either. But other systems have been unable to provide for these folks. And, an anecdote we like to share is everyone knows how to call 911. So when people just don't know what to do, 911 is called and law enforcement responds. And so we are trying to recruit and retain the right people and train them up the right way so we can do right by those that are suffering from these debilitating conditions. The sheriff, as Jesse stated, started January 1st. She has been very busy since January 1, and she's worked us really hard, and I know we're proud to do it. But she has commissioned an independent financial condition audit, where she wants to show the county and the public exactly how we spend our money. Related to that is the staffing study, where she is opening up our books on how we allocate resources, what time of day, what districts to patrol more, just how to allocate the limited staff we do have. And the city of Wilsonville is included in this study as well. We have a strategic business plan we just rolled out to making sure we're doing things the best way we can. And then this local option levy, which is expiring at the end of this year. Bringing me to the levy, $13 million of our $108 million budget for the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office comes from this levy. This levy was first introduced to the voters in 2006 at a cost of 24.8 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. It's about $66 for the median assessed home in Clackamas County. This levy was renewed in 2011 and 2016 at a status quo rate. So we have never asked the voters for an increased money in this levy. The levy currently pays for 84 beds in our jail, 30 jail deputies to run those 84 beds, 18 patrol deputies that you'll see in our marked police cars out in the county, and then our specialized drug team that I just spoke about. If this levy passes, this levy approved in 2016 will expire at the end of this year, and then if this levy is passed, it will replace the levy that is expiring at the end of this year. We are asking for a 12-cent increase, so 36.8 cents per 1,000 of assessed property value, about $98 per average home of assessed value of $267, which is the median assessed value. If this levy were to pass at the new rate, not only would we retain those things I just talked about, including the 30 jail deputies, 18 patrol deputies, and the drug team. What we would do with the additional money is we would add 5 detectives to the sheriff's office. These detectives would focus on elder abuse, child neglect, and felony crimes against persons. We would add 16 uniformed patrol deputies out onto the streets responding to 911 calls, and that would be 4 deputies per shift. That would be a noticeable increase. We would continue the specialized drug team that I mentioned. That I just want to be really clear on the drug team. This drug team is not going after or investigating kind of end users of drugs. They're not going after drug users. They're going after organizations that are operating in our community and in the city of Wilsonville that are causing overdose and getting drugs into schools, and they are focusing on what I believe are the right things. The sheriff has committed to implementing and maintaining a body-worn camera program where every deputy sheriff that you would see out there in a police car would wear a body camera, and that would record interactions as they're out doing their job. That would include a full-time FTE to run that program for us. And then it would also add 2 internal affairs investigators that would be non-sworn, so they wouldn't be our deputies and detectives. These would be folks that we would hire just for the purposes of internal affairs investigations. And then it would send the 2 detectives we have there back to our detective division to continue that. Future levies would not occur without voter approval, and it would be on a 5-year cycle through 2027. And that is how to follow us.
Thank you, Under Sheriff Copenhaver. Really appreciate the presentation, and I'd like to see if any of the counselors has a question. And to keep us on time, we'll go with 1 question each, if we can, please. I'm not seeing a hand. Oh, Counselor Linville, please.
Thank you for your service, and thank you for your presentation. I also wanted to just add my kudos to our chief. We appreciate all he does for us. I'm going to give my question it's got 2 parts of it. One of it is, will the body-worn cameras program be part of Wilsonville's program as well? And I see the chief nodding, so I understand that. And then the other thing is that, do all of your canine officers have bulletproof canine vests?
Yeah, so I know they're stab-proof vests. I do not know the answer to the question if they're bulletproof or not, but all the canines do have vests, thanks to a generous donor, actually, to the nonprofit that supports that program. And I know they are stab-proof vests. I cannot speak to whether they're bulletproof vests or not.
Okay. I'll get you an answer, Counselor.
Yeah, maybe some of us could help with that, so.
Thank you, Counselor Linville. Anyone else?
May I say, Mayor? Oh, sorry.
Please.
Mayor, I just forgot to say that I just forgot to mention one thing about this levy, and that is that this would open up 26 mental health and medical beds in the jail and add 6 deputies to staff those beds. So again, I kind of went down my tangent on why it's so important, why we're running into a lot of people we didn't know have mental health needs in the jail because of a failure to self-report. And so what these 26 medical beds allow us to do is have the resources to best serve that community when they're in our care and custody. So I apologize that I didn't mention that.
Okay, thank you. Council President Aukervall.
Thank you. You mentioned priority that's coming up or already in progress is the staffing study. And you said specifically that Wilsonville is included in that staffing study. And I wondered if you could give more information on what the potential outcomes, it might be too early to say, but potential outcomes for the direct effect in our city might be from that sort of study.
Absolutely. So I think the easy answer is it's too early to say, because what we have done is we've kind of been in the data collection phase where we have, the county has paid for this study. We have spent a bunch of time gathering all of our, call response data and budgets and staffing to get to this consulting company. I expect them to come back with, to tell me, the leader in my organization that you know, and I'm just making up possibilities. I don't know what the data is going to show because I've not had an early preview as to what they're finding out. But something like, you know, you have 5 deputies and a sergeant that work during the daytime, but in fact, your call volume is actually a little bit heavier from 7 to 8 p.m. So it would be, you know, great to shift one of your day shift officers or deputies and put them at night, or, you know, something similar to that. So I think that what it would provide to your city is just a really good snapshot on the resource allocation of the deputies assigned here, or to the city of Wilsonville, and how best to use them. I mean, this study is going to get into controlling overtime costs. It's going to get into, you know, is working 10-hour shifts, is that the best? Is that the best on the deputy? Is it the best for budget? Is it the best for calls for service? You know, we, in the county, we stagger where we have, you know, 16 deputies on day shift and 14 on our afternoon shift. You know, is that the right allocation? Is it the right idea that 3 deputies have Saturday off, you know, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, and only 1 has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off? It's just a real look into all of our resources and how best to use it for not only for budget, but for the wellness of our organization and responding to calls for service.
Thank you. That makes sense. It sounds like leading towards optimization of scheduling, perhaps, is what it would look like.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to get out of it. And this is also going to be done for our jail, as far as, you know, where we have folks in the facility and you know, safety and security, as well as our investigations division. Do we have the right people investigating child abuse versus elder abuse and such?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions, councilors? With that, I will thank our sheriff's department, and so glad that you could join us here today. And if we have any other questions, we can follow up with you.
Yep, just feel free to reach out. Thanks for having us tonight.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm now glad to be able to announce our second presenter for this section of our agenda, Council President Lynn Peterson. Welcome, Council President Peterson. And I know you've been doing visits to cities with these updates, and we're glad to have you join us here today.
Well, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It was more fun when we could all get together and just reconnect, but I just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to talk about what your regional government has been up to over the last year. In coordination with you all, we've been doing quite a bit. So we now have 5 lines of business. For the last 40 years, we've had basically 4 lines of business, and the additional is on affordable housing and supportive housing services. So I want to give you an update on that as well. So we'll just run through these and then see if you have any questions. It's good to be here with you all. Next slide. So those 5 lines of business, as you'll recall, are parks and nature, our open space bond measure is one of them. And we thank the voters for all that they have done on that. We recently passed a $475 million bond measure in which there is a local share. And we are on track to basically being able to get the local portion of that out to you so that you can get through your priority list as well as the regional. And we are working on prioritizing habitat to purchase and buy on behalf of the regions so that future generations can enjoy the 17,000 acres that we've already purchased and then more to come. So exciting work on that. The next, I think the next slide. We have the Oregon Zoo. We manage all the venues for the region. The Oregon Zoo being the premier venue. We obviously had to close down the zoo for a while, but it was pretty quickly reopened and during COVID for at least a small amount of folks to be able to go to. The highlight being able to open up for Oregon Zoo Life. I think a lot of families in this region were very happy to have the Oregon Zoo open back up, along with all of our regional parks were open. But we're also very excited that the new Polar Passage is going to be opening up very, very soon here. Well, actually it did. And we have welcomed Nora, who was just a little baby bear cub the last time we saw her. She's now all grown up. She went away for the couple of years while we built it, and we are hoping to find her a friend so that she has someone to play with. And you all know that we also are a national leader in condor conservation, bringing them back from the edge of extinction, and that they are leading research is being done right there in Clackamas County at a secret location so that they have a good breeding area. Next slide. We manage on behalf of the City of Portland the 5 centers for the performing arts, the Arlene Schnitzer, Hall, and Keller being the 2 largest that you'll recognize. Of course, all 5 had to shut down during COVID. When we shut down all of the performing arts centers, the Oregon Zoo, and the Convention Center and Expo Center, we ended up having to lay off 750 people. It was an awful, awful day, 3 weeks into the pandemic. We hope to have them all come back, but we hope to come back better with more emphasis on making sure that our workforce is taken care of when we come back from COVID. Next slide. Expo and Convention Center have been doing a lot of heavy lifting on our behalf, the region's behalf. They hosted a lot of Clackamas County folks during the fires that happened in September. The Expo Center hosted the Red Cross staging where a lot of large vehicles and campers went. But the Convention Center was the staging area for families for emergency shelter. We also had homeless shelters coming and going from the Convention Center, depending on whether it was weather or whether they needed more space for making sure that everybody was safe in Multnomah County shelter space. We also did a lot of COVID testing, both at Expo and OCC, but now, as you all know, OCC is a mass vaccination site between the 4 hospital systems. It is run like nothing I've seen before. We're doing around 8,000 people a day, and we are actually leading the pack for mass vaccination sites across the country in terms of the amount of people going through. So you should be very proud of your regional convention center and expo center staff. They have just done a fabulous job during a very trying time. Next slide. You know that another line of business that we have is managing the waste for the region. While the city has a contract for garbage pickup, it is then delivered to transfer stations that we regulate. And we also have 2 public transfer stations where we either go to recycling or to the Arlington landfill. A big part of what we're trying to do always is trying to reduce the amount of waste that actually goes to the Arlington landfill through our recycling programs. We have a public-private partnership of system investments for the recycling program, and then we do a lot of work on food scraps as we bring more of that into the system. How do we then reuse the byproducts? My public service announcement for the night would be just to remind everybody that there's a lot of wishful recycling going on. We really, 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 really wish that everything was, that had the chasing arrows was recyclable, but it's not. The folks that you see in this picture are actually picking out some of the wishful recycling. It's time and resource intensive to do that in order to get to the actual recycling. So if you want to know what's actually recyclable, please go to the Metro website and take a look, because it just depends on the demand for the product, and we keep it updated there. Next slide. We also, one of our lines of business is the long-range planning. We obviously maintain the urban growth boundary in coordination with our cities and counties, and we do the long-range transportation planning. As you know, we have put the 2070 or the 2040 refresh to 2070, our 50-year plan update, on hold. We did not think that people wanted to actually, during a pandemic and trying economic times, think about a 50-year plan. We are more focused with you on the next 5 years of economic recovery, and we're doing that through Greater Portland Inc. with the SEDS recovery, the 5-year regional economic recovery plan that we have adopted and put through, which we'll be looking for funding for. Next slide. on the idea of economic development and everything that we do, we are making sure that we are investing in our working families, and the region pulled together the Construction Careers Pathways program to make sure that all of the public capital projects in the region, no matter what jurisdiction, if you're looking at a capital project, we are all trying to work towards the same goals, to hiring women and BIPOC community members, making sure that they're supported once they're in the workforce and that they have enough work to get through the apprenticeship hours into a journeyman position. It was not the same with every jurisdiction in terms of the goals, and that was creating problems within the Construction Careers Pathway program in terms of getting people into the construction workforce. So hopefully this will streamline that, and we will allow more people to get to journeyman positions so that they are there when we get infrastructure, bonding and packaging, especially at the federal level through. Next slide. We also, as you know, have this new line of business. So the region asked us to step up and help with the affordable housing crisis. We have said that we will deliver 3,900 affordable and deeply affordable housing units over the next 5 to 7 years. Clackamas County would be your housing authority. All of the 7 housing authorities in the region are going to be making up that 3,900 units, that goal. To date, we have, in the last 2 years, we have gotten 34% of the resources committed. So either projects are in construction or starting construction, and 54% of the goal has been met. So we're ahead of schedule due to interest rates and also Biden administration tax credits that were invoked in January. So we are well on our way to actually achieving much more than the 3,900 units, which means we believe we can serve 20,000 people instead of the original 12,000 at the end of this 5 to 7 years. So that's just the start, and obviously that's just the first wave of people that will be utilizing this affordable housing. Many, many more families over the years will be able to get into this affordable housing and then graduate out and hopefully to home ownership. Next slide. The supportive housing measure passed, again, the voters passed a wonderful measure to functionally end chronic homelessness in the greater Portland region by 2030, 10 years away. This measure is in the middle of implementation, not in the middle, but in the start of implementation. The local implementation plans that were required in the bond measure or in the levy measure, all of them will be adopted in the next 2 months. So all 3 counties will have their local implementations done and ready to go. And then we will do intergovernmental agreements with each one of them. And the money starts to flow in July. And the Multnomah County is the first one out of the block, and they believe that they should be able to help move at least 1,000 people off of the streets and into supportive housing, as well as wraparound services the first year and beyond, hopefully on an annual basis. We'll see what Clackamas and Washington numbers are soon, but I'm very happy to see this. I know Washington County, I wish I had the Clackamas County numbers for you, but I just saw Washington County present. They normally, this is how little money we have had in the system, as an example, because the feds and state have not been stepping up. They've had $4 million annually to do affordable housing, and now they're going to have $38 million. So it's a substantial increase, and we shall see substantial results, which is great. Next slide. Finally, just a reminder, rounding all this out of the parks work that we're doing, Newell Creek Canyon Nature Park will be opening soon, very close to you. This is a view of some of the land that we have along the Clackamas River, and I'm just so proud of the work that this region has done in conjunction with its cities and counties on bringing salmon back into streams where they were not surviving or thriving at all before, and now they're back. That is a testament to the work that's been done on our land use, as well as protection of these lands. And it means that not only are the salmon healthier, but we're healthier. So with that, I'll just say thank you to the voters and thank you to the City Council for continuing to support your regional government and just making this a better place for all of us.
Thank you, Council President Peterson. We have a few minutes if ever any of the councilors would like to ask a question. All right, well, thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing you on the next visit.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So we are now ready for the part of our agenda, which is citizen input. And this is an opportunity for visitors to address the City Council on items not on the agenda. It's also a time to address items that are on the agenda but are not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and the City Council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Mayor, we have two folks actually at City Hall. First up, we have David Carlson. He has submitted his address for the record, so he doesn't need to read his address when he comes up to speak, followed by his lovely wife, Joan Carlson, of 39 years, I understand, so congratulations to them. I hope it's not your anniversary. Okay, good. So we would start with Mr. Carlson first and then Joan.
Thank you.
My first time testifying in front or sharing comments in front of the City Council. So, Mayor, Council, I'm David Carlson, Wilsonville resident since 1994, Wilsonville business resident since 2008. I love Wilsonville. It's a great town, and we have great staff. The results are obvious. In the 27 years we've lived here, we've seen development done well and a beautiful city. We're pleased to live here. We're proud to call this place our home. I've had a recent experience ongoing with the Development Review Board. As I talked to fellow citizens, what I heard prior to my first meeting is, you can't change anything, your voice doesn't matter, the developer gets what they want, the government's already decided what they want. I don't believe any of that's true. In fact, when I got together with my neighbors and friends, none of us believed that that was true. We believe that this is indeed a good process. We want to participate, so we did. We decided to pool our minutes, to share our comments, to give clear and detailed points. We went to our first Development Review Board meeting, and we were pleased with what we saw. The Development Review Board volunteers, rookies, they're smart. They paid attention. They asked great questions. It was an excellent process. It was neat to be involved in it, at least for the first few hours. It did continue for 6 hours. Unfortunately, the citizens' testimony, which we'd carefully prepared, spent hours on, didn't start till past 10:30, went on till 11:30 at night. We ran into an issue with the seating of minutes. Our plan was to share pool minutes so that we would have a better opportunity to make good points. Unfortunately, a number of our testimonies were cut short because it turns out at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, the citizens who were seating their minutes had to have stayed on the phone call all that time and had to seat their minutes in person. So at the last second, presenters had to cut their presentation in half in just a few seconds preparation. So I've been charged to come up with a couple of, or to share a couple of questions for you folks to ask for tonight. And I appreciate your consideration in these. Number one, is it the city's intent to listen to everything that the citizens have to say and to encourage participation? Question number two is, what is the procedure for ceding minutes to another speaker at a DRB meeting? And number three, who has discretion to allow for extenuating circumstances in seating minutes, which prevent incomplete testimony. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work. We appreciate you folks a lot.
Thank you. And now we have our second presenter.
Good evening, Your Honor and council members. My name is Joan Carlson. I live with Dave, and our address is already registered. I attended the Development Review Board meeting on April 12th, and I have a few comments that I wanted to share, but my testimony was one of those that was cut short because the people who had ceded their minutes to me went to bed. So my time was cut in half, and what I wanted to share last Monday night was I wanted to draw attention to the wonderful Boone's Ferry Messenger here in Wilsonville. This is a great publication. And in the March issue, Mayor, you wrote in here, while it is devastating to see our beautiful tree canopy damaged, we are fortunate to have avoided more catastrophic loss. We lost so many trees, as we all know, during the recent ice storm. And it hurts me as I drive around town and see so many trees that have just been shredded, okay? But I was really impressed with what was written in the March Boone's Ferry Messenger. In the April Boone's Ferry Messenger, there was one article and it was titled Tree Removal. Think twice before you proceed. I consider myself a tree lover. I plant trees. We plant trees in our yard all the time. And as you know, with the Development Review Board, one of the big issues has been tree removal. So I'm really glad to see that Wilsonville is a sterling tree city, that we love trees. There's a whole article here on Councilor Charlotte Lehan, and she's been named and honored for her commitment to the urban treescape. So I want to end this by saying I hope that Wilsonville will continue to be a tree city, that Wilsonville will continue to do the right thing and to protect and preserve our urban tree canopy. This is a beautiful place to live, and we are very appreciative and very thankful we live here, and we are really appreciative that we can be a part of this community that listens well and cares for the urban landscape. Thank you.
Thank you.
Helena? Next up.
And now do we?
Next up, Mayor, we have some more people in the virtual lobby, starting with, I hope I'm saying this right, Helena Lule. It's either Helena or Helena. Thank you.
You did great. I'm impressed already. Okay. My name's Helena Lule. My address is on file. I sent it in today, and I'm a longtime resident of Wilsonville and very proud to live here. I would like to take this time to thank and recognize the Development Review Board A for the time they spent on Monday's marathon 6-hour meeting that lasted till 12:30 a.m. I think that's the latest I've been out in a whole year. It was extremely evident that the board was well prepared and that they reviewed the 165-page staff report as well as other numerous emails, letters, and comments sent in from concerned citizens. They asked insightful questions and were extremely engaged for the whole meeting. Their service to our city and our community is truly appreciated, and they represent the very best of Wilsonville. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Mayor, is Chip Halstead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Hi, this is Chip Halstead. My family and I have lived here in Wilsonville for almost 20 years. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to join the meeting this evening. Last Monday, I also attended in person the DRB meeting regarding the Canyon Creek development. And first of all, I'd like to thank the staff and volunteers who worked very hard and stayed until 12:30 a.m. to try to accommodate a very full presentation and citizens' concerns. As you may know, the DRB meeting did last for a full 6 hours. But between the 25 people attending in person and about 50 more people attending on Zoom, only 16 citizens had the opportunity to share their questions and present their concerns. So I'd like to ask if there might be an adjusted format for our next DRB meeting so that all citizens will be able to participate and in a much earlier time frame. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cosgrove, do we have any more presenters?
Any more folks looking to speak under public comment? That is all we have, Mayor.
So thank you. Before we move on to our next agenda item, I just want to just check in on our general process for the citizen input, which is that we, as we said in the preliminary part of this, that staff and city council make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. So Ms. Jacobson, our city attorney, is the parliamentarian, and I wonder if you might like to respond to some of the, just give us a bit of a summary of the process points that have been brought up, and then we can talk about some of this in other planning.
Well, so I can start by responding to the issue of seating minutes or aggregating minutes. That is totally discretionary with either the mayor when it's in front of city council or the chair of the development review board. There is nothing in the city council protocol or city charter or any statute that allows for that. People are given an opportunity to speak. It's a 3-minute time frame. If there are lots of speakers, sometimes that becomes difficult. The time can be reduced. We don't like to do that. The idea behind aggregating the minutes is not so much to give somebody a longer period of time to speak, but it's rather to avoid repetitive testimony. So if you and 10 neighbors want to say the same thing, the idea is you appoint somebody to say it for the group. But in terms of if somebody can't be there or has to go to bed before they get to speak, unfortunately, under the law, if you want to testify in person or give your time to somebody else to testify in person, you have to be there to identify yourself and say that, because otherwise you don't have any standing going forward in any appeal. And it's also in terms of fairness, we have no other way of knowing whether somebody has said this person can speak on my behalf or not. So that's the one thing, is if you want to ask somebody else to give your testimony, you have to be present to ask. And again, it's up to the chair to decide whether or not they're going to allow that kind of testimony, i.e. where somebody speaks for several people. So the way it typically works is people speaking for themselves are allowed to speak first, and then to the extent there is time left at the end, if people want to go together, the DRB chair has the ability to say yes, but you don't necessarily get 3 minutes per person, depending on how much time there is. As was mentioned, this was a really long meeting. DRB members were there till 12:30. There was a long staff presentation at the beginning, and although I don't know how many people spoke at the meeting, 16 could be correct. I know a lot of people did cede their time to specific speakers, and then other people didn't stay on the phone the whole time. But by the time the meeting was closed, everybody that was present and asked to speak was given the opportunity to speak. So that did happen at the meeting. And the other thing I would say is Also during the meeting, as you know, because it's the same announcement that you will use, if somebody is at a public hearing and they haven't submitted testimony ahead of time, or they can't be at the meeting, or they were at the meeting but they had to leave, they can email testimony into an address that's given by the chair at the beginning. And as long as it comes before the hearing is closed, that's also considered part of the record. So what I would say to people, if you want to be sure that everything you want said is heard, the wisest course of action is to submit it in writing as much in advance as you can. Then it gets to the DRB members. They have time to actually read it and digest it. You can still come to the meeting and still have your 3 minutes, or take less, just get up and say, I submitted written testimony, you know, on such and such a date, and give a short summary of it and be heard that way. Unfortunately, when you have a meeting that a lot of people feel strongly about, there are only so many hours in the evening. And the other thing, of course, everybody knows is with land use decisions, you're on a tight time frame, and we had to get an extension just to continue this meeting so the DRB could continue to deliberate, and we won't get another extension. So at the next meeting, they did keep the record open because they didn't have a chance to ask all of the questions they wanted to ask to the developer and or the citizens that presented testimony, and so that will happen at the next meeting. But I would say nobody should count on the ability to speak beyond their allotted time, because that's not necessarily going to be granted by the chair at the meeting. And then there's also always the time constraints that, you know, the main thing is that everybody who comes should have the opportunity to speak, and that's the primary goal. I don't know if I got it all the questions.
Well, I think there was I think Mr. Halstead said, is there some modifications we could make, maybe starting earlier to allow more public testimony? That's something I'd have to talk to planning staff and legal about. I don't know if we've advertised it for a date and time certain or not, but certainly any modifications we could make as a staff that the applicant would agree to. If we had to get their consent, we will pursue those and do the best that we can for the neighbors in that area that want to speak on this. And I also know that this has to come to council, so I believe there will be another opportunity for people to come and speak at the council as well.
Yeah, so I can address that a little bit. Like, as I mentioned, we're past the time that we were allowed with under the statute, and it was because the applicant agreed to extend the time until the end of until June 30th, that we've even got the time to have another DRB meeting, which will be held on the 10th. And one of the issues with moving that meeting up is every DRB member has a job, and so they have to go to work, and they come in, you know, and then and people have to go to work too, right? So that's why the meeting starts at 6:30 rather than earlier in the day. And so I don't know that it will be possible to move that meeting up, and it also has to be advertised in advance. But the meeting will be held on May 10th, and what the staff has asked is that, and we'll get to this later in the meeting, tonight was supposed to be the night when the council heard the zone change and comp plan amendment, had that public hearing, but obviously since DRB was continued, the council meeting tonight will be continued. And so DRB will be on May 10th, and this will be subject to later discussion, and you don't need to answer this now. The appeal period for that decision, whichever way it goes, will be May 25th. And so the first reading in front of council, we are going to suggest be at a special meeting, because again, if a lot of people want to speak, if it was just, this would be just starting now, and it would be even later than 12:30. But so we are suggesting, or planning, the planning staff is suggesting that if it works for city council, we look at making that day May 27th for the first reading, and then the second reading would be on June 7. And again, things may change depending on what happens at the DRB meeting and whether or not there's an appeal of that decision. But because we are on the strict statutory time frame, if we don't hold the meetings we need to hold by the deadline date, then the application is deemed approved. So we never want to miss our time frames. So that's, I think that covers everything. Did I miss anything, Mr. Cosgrove?
I think that responded to everything that I heard.
Yeah, but it is very important. We've got to get everything in within the time frame or the decision is made for us.
Thank you. And if in reviewing those questions there is more information needed, the staff can share that. Thank you very much. Next up is councilor comments, liaison reports, and meeting announcements, beginning with Council President Ackerval, please.
Thank you. Let's see, because I'll flip to the calendar, but since our last council meeting, I guess, I listened in on the Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting last Monday, and also listened in on the LOC Regional Roundtable, which others on council attended. I know Mayor Fitzgerald and Councilor Linville also listened on that call and participated in that call. And one bit of information that I wanted to share specifically about that that was brought up during the call is PGE's Bill Assistance Program. And information was forwarded to us, and I've seen it starting to pop up in different channels as well. We saw it in one of the school newsletters. So I think that's starting to get out into the community. But it sounds like if I understand correctly, that there is a one-to-one match up to a specific dollar amount. But people can find out more information by calling 1-800-542-8818. And I believe there will be information and help available in multiple languages for people to find out more about that program. And coming up, I will be attending the Willamette Intake Facilities meeting this next Monday. And then also I wanted to highlight on April 30th, there is a holiday, Dia de los Niños, and it may be a new holiday to some or familiar to some in our community. I'm also seeing more activities happening around that holiday in our schools and celebrating, and maybe in the community broader as well. But it is a day to honor children and the importance of childhood, to promote literacy and reading and connection between kids and books. And that sounds like something that many in our community in the city of Wilsonville care deeply about. So something to keep an eye for, and that is April 30th. And that's it for me for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Ackerval. And Councilor Lehan is excused tonight, so we'll go to Councilor West.
Thank you so much. I know we talked about the youth sports in Wilsonville last meeting, but since then, the football season ended and your Wildcats went undefeated. They played a number of 6A schools. So today I am giving my little pride support for Wilsonville sports by wearing my, I guess this is like a track jacket, but yeah, so they did really great. Track's happening now, softball for girls, baseball's happening, lacrosse is happening. So it's awesome to see our kids get back involved in those sports, and it was great to be a part of that. I have spent quite a bit of time working on testifying on a bill that I know I spoke to Mayor Fitzgerald about this privately, but I wanted to share it with the rest of the council and everybody, and my thoughts about it. It's House Bill 3322. It's going onto the House floor tomorrow for a vote. Most likely will then go on to the Senate, where I think it will be successful. House Bill 3322, I think, will impact our city directly. Its chief sponsors are Representative Hayden, Campos, and Neron. I really really appreciate Neron sponsoring this bill. And what this does is it allows the production of food in planned communities by lot owners and their tenants. And since we have a lot of HOAs, this will directly impact our city. I support this bill. I hope my fellow councils would consider looking into supporting this bill. I'll testify again when it moves on to the Senate. But I wanted to quickly share my thoughts about this as I got a chance to speak to everybody and tell the city kind of why I think this is important for us to really be watching. When I moved to Wilsonville, we landed in a home where, like most people, were governed by a restrictive covenant that would preclude us from using our property in the same manner that we were able to in Portland. It's been a huge loss for us, but I also believe it to be a significant loss for the people that we represent. This month, the City of Wilsonville Parks and Recreation hosting an event on how to do backyard composting and to keep backyard chickens. Like many events in the COVID era, this would be online, which has potentially maybe just diminished because of that. We might see diminished participation. But truly, it won't be the fact that it's online that keeps the participation low. It's the fact that the majority of the homes in Wilsonville are excluded by contract, not by our local government, from participating in doing robust gardening or keeping chickens in their backyard. It's about the only thing I kind of don't like about this community that I wish more of us were allowed to do. I know it's really popular in Portland and other communities across the state. And I think that it's important as we're in lockdown that it helps people have more access to healthy, affordable food. It promotes wellness and well-being. The property covenants in Oregon also, in my opinion, have a really ugly past in our nation's history. They've been used to keep out people of color out of communities. And it has been found that restrictions based explicitly on race were unconstitutional, and other types of restrictions begin to be added into these homes and purchase contracts that have been implicit and discriminatory effect on what would otherwise be culturally appropriate use of personal property, like growing food. I also think that this gives a lot of opportunity for people from other countries, other ethnicities, to have the opportunity to grow foods that are harder for them to get at our grocery stores. I think it allows people to have the right to subsist. And I wish that I believe if we took census data and we laid that over HOAs, we would find those to be the communities that were predominantly white. And I think that the more restricted these HOAs can be throughout Oregon, that people of color or BIPOC community or people that have certain food restrictions have less access to get to this food and to grow their own food. And so I really appreciate Representative Neron partnering with Representative Hayden, who's in District 7 down in Douglas County and the Roseburg area, and really finding innovative ways during this time that we're trying to be more DEI sensitive, that we're trying to find more affordable ways for people to be healthy, that we're trying to find people find so much joy in gardening and owning chickens, that this is going to fall back on local ordinances like Wilsonville to have ordinances that govern this and not HOAs. And so I think as this passes through, we want to be aware of it. I'm kind of passionate about it. I've been testifying on it and working on it, especially over this last week or two. So if you guys have questions offline or want to get involved, let me know. But I think that this is important and something we should be aware of.
Thank you, Councilor West. It sounds like it's something we need to study and find out more about it. Thank you. Councilor Linville.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try and be as brief as I can. I just wanted to remind folks that the Spring Fling activities are still going on to the end of this month. I was really excited to be able to do the drive-through, pick up a Trillium plant event. It was fun to see our staff and city manager out there helping with that event. It was a great drive-through, and I tried to attend some of the other events, and they filled up so fast that I couldn't get on. So I guess it's a great problem for us to have. I also attended the LOC Leader Conference call on the 9th. Those, again, are just such great information. And I thank Council President Ackerval for her information about the PGE assistance program. That was great from the Region 2 LOC President Roundtable that was done on the 14th. I also attended the C4 Metro subcommittee meeting on the 14th, and although I don't think there was really, they're struggling with trying to find out a date that works well for the meeting. It's at 7:30 in the morning, and frankly, I can't imagine how we would attend that meeting if we had to drive there and get to wherever it was at 7:30 in the morning. But to grab your cup of coffee and get on the Zoom meeting is actually pretty convenient. So I'm hoping that will stay as we go forward. I'm actually liking some of our Zoom meetings. There was discussion at that meeting about some of the regional funding, the flexible funds and the priorities, as well as ongoing projects and capital projects. And thank goodness that our SMART director, Mr. Bashir, was there asking questions about perhaps availability of funds to assist with our SMART Wilsonville to Clackamas Town Center project. I'm not certain that we're going to be able to get any money from there, but it's nice to have him asking the right questions. And then Councillor Ackerval and I attended what is now the League of Oregon Cities is putting together a women's elected officials caucus and women's caucus, and so we've been both participating in those meetings, and so I'm kind of it's kind of a great opportunity for both women elected officials as well as those that are appointed to boards and commissions to become members. And so that's information that I think as that gets up and running, that we will want to get out to our board and commission members so that they can join in and get involved in that organization as well. And then on the 22nd, I believe it's the 22nd, it's this coming Thursday, I will be presenting with Kevin O'Malley to our Wilsonville Rotary group. They want to know what activities we are partnering together to do to support business in our that have been negatively impacted by COVID, and certainly we have a lot to report on there. And then also I'll be reporting on our activities in the development of our DEI committee. So lots of good things to report. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Linville. And, you know, we did actually hear, I'm just thinking of the many messages throughout our meeting tonight, the PGE Assistance Fund, the new COVID relief that we heard about from Business Oregon, Council President Peterson talking about the housing assistance. There are a lot of things coming together to support people and increased vaccination rates. So we actually do have a lot going forward that we didn't have a year ago in that regard. And there are many, many other parts to this, and I think we'll continue to work on that. and maybe put together a more comprehensive summary of all of this soon. So with that, we're now ready to go to our consent agenda, and I would like to ask the city attorney to please read it for us.
Resolution number 2891, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to extend the professional services agreement with J. Ray Ads and PR Inc. for Explore Wilsonville Tourism Promotion and Development and Destination Marketing Program. And secondly, the minutes of the April 5, 2021 City Council meeting.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Your Honor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second? Councilor West.
Second. Sure. I'll do it.
All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Under new business, will the city attorney please read the resolution 2890 by title?
Resolution number 2890, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing staff to proceed with the recommended design for the Beckman Dip project.
But may we have the staff report? Crash hour.
So I'm Nancy Krashower, and good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald and the councilors. I'm Nancy Krashower, and I'm assisting Dominique Huffman, who's the project manager for the Beckman Dip project. Thank you. The Beckman Dip project is located on Beckman Road between Canyon Creek Road and Wilsonville Road. We last came before you about the project in February and April of 2020, which has been a while. At that point, we updated you on our preliminary planning, fish passage requirements, and the need to complete a hydrologic study for Beckman Creek, which we have started. A comment to listeners from the public: all of the past work has been summarized in our council staff report, which is online for your review. Tonight, we're going to move through those past efforts pretty quickly. And we're going to also update you on, we'll update the council on the work completed since then and our staff recommendations for a bridge design type rather than an embankment, and a full road closure rather than building a temporary road as an on-site detour. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. There we go. Thank you. Oh, yeah, perfect. Why this project? Well, we're all very familiar with the safety issues of the Beckman Dip and why we need to fix it. The dip is unsafe, too steep, too narrow, and it really needs to be raised. The dip creates a major impediment on Beckman Road, which is a critical connection between jobs, shopping, schools, and our existing and future and new neighborhoods. The dip is tricky for emergency vehicles, transit, and school buses, and we routinely need to close it during ice and storm events, snow events. At this time, a traffic signal is needed at Beckman and Canyon Creek, and we cannot build it at this time until we fix the dip. Westbound drivers do not have sufficient sight distance for viewing the signal and stop vehicles. The primary project goals of this are to provide a safe route for all users, provide a safe future regional Beckman Creek Trail connection underneath Beckman Road, and also for wildlife passage underneath Beckman Road. We need to provide access for public works to maintain the Beckman Creek sewer trunk line and storm sewer outfalls along the creek, and for parks for future maintenance of the regional trail. The other thing we'll be achieving in this project is to provide habitat, better habitat for water quality and fish and other species. Tonight, Dominique will go over the design alternatives studied since then, including an embankment option rather than a bridge, and we'll share our staff recommendations. Next slide.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. As Nancy mentioned, I'm Dominique Huffman. I'm a civil engineer here with the city. The first alternative we'll look at today is the embankment alternative. So just to be brief and move the conversation along, given the requirements associated with providing fish passage, the possible cost savings of this option do not outweigh the disadvantages. This alternative does not meet project goals, and any alterations to this base case design that we would make to make this more viable would result in significant additional cost, further removing this option from consideration. So we do not recommend this alternative, as it does not safely and realistically meet the needs that the community has set for this corridor. So we'll jump right on to the next alternative. And this is a bridge alternative, and of the alternatives we've looked at, it has the smallest footprint. It provides open trails underneath the bridge, and it reestablishes the creek bed and provides the lowest risk for environmental permitting moving forward. And it's the most accessible option for public works and park maintenance needs for the future infrastructure that will be constructed north and south along the creek. And this option also has the shortest construction duration overall. So those are very, very brief summaries of the two main alternatives. Now, and both of those have assumed full road closure to construct. And I'll talk a little bit about the traffic study in a bit. But first, we'll take a look at how we have one option from. So this is a on-site detour, which would shift traffic to the north. The same general layout for this on-site detour would be used for either a bridge or embankment alternative. And the considerations here listed here apply to both of those alternatives. In addition to these considerations, it's important to acknowledge that this option has the biggest impact to the trees and neighboring property, and it would be very difficult to get permitting of this alternative without a lot more mitigation. So a quick look at what the on-site detour tree impact would look like. This picture gives you an idea of the trees and the area that would be impacted by the on-site detour. Our preliminary tree survey identified a number of well-established Oregon white oaks and a few Douglas firs that would be taken out with the on-site detour. These are also located primarily on one property, which would be significantly impacted by this on-site detour option. And one property owner did provide public comment via written testimony that should be included in the updated council packet. So as mentioned, all alternatives would require a road closure for some duration of time, and that is kind of summarized here in this blue circled box. The time range is between 5 months and 20 months for a full closure duration, depending on the alternative. And this closure is required because we are raising up the roadway so much, it makes it challenging to tie the existing road into the new road while keeping traffic going through here. And to make sure we fully understood the impact any road closure has for any duration of time on our transportation network, we worked with a traffic engineer and completed a traffic study. Scott with DKS is actually here virtually tonight, and we'll discuss the traffic detour more fully after our presentation. And of course, as the project progresses and we get closer to construction, we will be reaching out to the neighboring communities and other key stakeholders like emergency services and SMART about potential traffic impacts. our focus, our goal is to focus on strategies to make sure detour traffic stays on the detour routes, such as local access only signs. And also the goal is to prevent through traffic from detouring through neighborhoods. So there is a lot of information in the council packet. We've briefly run through a lot of it tonight. Hopefully this summary table helps us digest these different alternatives and the associated impacts. So the alternative type is shown on the left-hand side, and it shows bridge versus embankment, and breaking it down into the sub-alternative to account for construction traffic options. There's the on-site detour and the road closure shown. Along the top are a few key considerations. The cost range is from $17 million to $23 million. The construction duration is how long the project will take to construct from the time we break ground to the time the road is open again to traffic, and that ranges between 15 months and 33 months. The closure duration is how long the road will be closed to through traffic, and that shows the time needed to transition the road grades between the different stages. And this range is between 5 months and 20 months. This table also shows the right-of-way acquisition that we predict we will need based on our preliminary designs, and it shows it's far greater. A far greater acquisition is needed for the embankment alternatives and the on-site detour options. And the last column shown there is the environmental risk, and that represents the likelihood that the alternative would get permitted with the current assumptions. The lower the risk, the less likely a change would be required that would significantly increase the project's cost. So I know that's a lot, but we've gathered a lot of great, valuable information, and we feel very confident that we're ready to move forward. What we've considered most during this process is finding a solution to make it safe and accessible, to make it connected to needed facilities and services, and make sure it fits in with the plan for the community, and also that it's the most beneficial option for the environment. So taking into account all that we've learned, we recommend proceeding with the bridge alternative with the full road closure, as this solution fulfills the city's goals and needs. And next up, Nancy will go over our next steps.
I wonder if it's possible for Scott to go ahead and give his presentation, and then we can do next steps. Is that going to be a problem for Beth? Because I can easily just do this slide otherwise.
No, Scott will just have to share.
Okay, I'll stop sharing now.
I appreciate that.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald and City Council. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to kind of walk through some of the traffic impacts of the full closure. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about passenger cars. We collected traffic counts at 10 intersections to evaluate the impacts of the full closure. Dominique was very wise and had us collect traffic counts back in 2019 prior to the pandemic, so we were able to evaluate all these intersections before the traffic volumes dropped. And we collected counts also prior to the pandemic on Beckman Road to determine what the daily traffic volumes are on Beckman Road, as well as the peak hour volumes. And the PM peak is the highest hour of traffic within Wilsonville, and so that's what we evaluated in this study. And so you can see the 10 intersections that we evaluated. And the traffic volume today on Beckman Road is about 6,500 average daily vehicles. So that would be 6,500 in in both directions. And in the peak hour, you have about 800 PM peak hour vehicles, so about approximately 400 vehicles per direction. And so as we looked at the full closure, we then redistributed that traffic to the Ellingson. So you really have two routes to get around Beckman Road, to come south from Wilsonville Road or from the north from Ellingson, 65th, and Stafford. And so we evaluated the impacts from that. So we evaluated and looked at the detours of what that volume would impact. And as you can see from our counts, all of the intersections that are blue, there was really minimal impacts to the city's street system. All the intersections continued to meet the city's level of service standard. There was one intersection we would say had significant impact, and that was the intersection of Stafford and 65th. For those of you who have driven through that intersection in the last few years, know that there's some significant delays. And you can see some of the pictures when we were out there observing and doing some of our traffic data collection. You can see on, look, this is southbound on the north leg of 65th, and you can see the traffic volume as far as the eye can see, as well as the eastbound on Ellingson Road. You can see the long delays. And what happens is there's quite a bit of traffic on Stafford Road, north-south, and so they just have a hard time making the left and right turns at this stop-controlled intersection. So with the full road closure, you're going to see an additional 400 trips that would be added to this intersection. And so I'll talk a little bit about what we're recommending the temporary improvements to happen at that intersection, or an increase of about 15% on the existing volumes at that intersection. So as part of the road closure, we're recommending that a temporary traffic signal be installed, and that temporary traffic signal will be able to give right-of-way to the side streets and to help regulate traffic during this full closure to mitigate our impacts with the increase in traffic volumes. And Dominique, Nancy, and I will be working with Clackamas County and Washington County to discuss some of the operations with this recommended temporary traffic signal. So, as I mentioned, really the full closure has the biggest impact on the east-west traffic within Wilsonville. For example, from Frog Pond, Villebois, the schools on the east side of Wilsonville, really, those are the traffic volume that are really getting displaced with this full closure, and that's what we analyzed through this process. So as you can see, the detours, the two detours, first we'll look at the south detour. So as the road is closed in this location, the traffic that normally went east-west here is going to be forced to either go south and then head up Town Center Loop and use Canyon Creek or Parkway Avenue to get back to Beckman, or they may continue on Wilsonville Road through the interchange to get to Villebois and other land uses. We're estimating, as I mentioned, there was 800 total vehicle, and based on our modeling and evaluation, it appears that about 400 of those 800 vehicles will head south to Wilsonville Road, and the other 400 will head north on Stafford Road to head to Ellingson. And so of that 400, you'll see about 175 of those heading north up to Canyon Creek, about 60 along uses along Parkway, and then 140 additional PM peak hour trips through the Wilsonville interchange. And we just did some kind of analysis to kind of show you what this means for travel time. So if you live in the Frog Pond area and you want to go to Wilsonville Town Center, so you would normally probably come to the east, head down Canyon Creek to get to Town Center. Now you're going to have to go down Wilsonville Road. And with that additional traffic, it's going to add, it's going to add about 0.7 miles out of direction than would normal, and it's going to add about 1 to 2 minutes of additional travel time to that detour route. Now we'll talk a little bit about the north route. I previously mentioned that you'd add 400 vehicles to that intersection, but about 150 of that traffic would head south along Canyon Creek to uses along Canyon Creek, jobs and housing. Another 150 would be along Parkway Avenue. Some of this traffic would continue all the way down and head east to Beckman Road. And then you have about 100 vehicles that would go through the Wilsonville interchange. And you can see the percentages of increase, but as we evaluated, all of the facilities can accommodate these detour traffic volumes with the exception of the intersection at Stafford and 65th. And as we looked at some of the north routes, it's going to add, 1 to 3 miles. The 1 mile is going to be, the cars that were already going up to, say, Argyle Square have the least amount of out-of-direction travel, while the cars that want to go east Wilsonville across I-5, they're going to have more like 3 miles of out-of-direction. So instead of a straight shot, they have to go all the way around to the north and come back around to head over. And that's where you're going to see the 1 to 2 minutes of delay up to the north to those types of uses. And then to east Wilsonville, you're going to see more like a out of direction and an additional travel time of around 7 minutes.
Quick correction, that would be west Wilsonville.
I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. They're heading from east to west. Thank you, Nancy. Sure. So we also evaluated just a travel time to Argyle Square, and it adds about 0.6 miles out of direction and about additional 2 minutes to the existing travel times to that use. So that covers the motor vehicle. Are there any questions before I move on to other modes of travel?
Looks like we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. So smart transit service, I just wanted to share, this is the existing smart transit routes. And as you can see, this is the area of the detour. So right now, SMART does not have any routes currently that would be impacted by this full closure. And they'll be one of the key stakeholders that we work with through the process to make sure that we're providing the services needed for potential impacts to services. But the good news is that as of now, it doesn't appear as we'll have a major impact on smart services. So emergency services is probably the most critical of impacts and working with the stakeholder. What I've shown in this map, you can see Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue Station 56 to the north on Ellingson Road, and also to the south, you can see Station 52 as well as the Wilsonville Police Department. And as you can see, I think both of those stations are strategically placed to continue providing good services with the detour. For now, for Frog Pond or to the schools, there's 2 different options for emergency services to get to this area, and they'll no longer be able to go down Canyon Creek across the dip, but they will be able to access this area via Ellingson Road. And one of the good things about the temporary traffic signal is the temporary signal will include fire preemption equipment that will give the green light to emergency vehicles that will probably improve their travel times beyond where they're at today when you see those long queues of traffic. So those are, again, the stakeholder we'll continue to work with to make sure that emergency response times are minimally impacted with this detour. Pedestrians is the next mode of travel I wanted to talk a little bit about. You can see from the impact today, really the only detour route for pedestrians will be south. So as you head to the south, Wilsonville Road will be kind of the recommended detour route to the closure. Today there's pedestrian facilities provided along Wilsonville Road, Town Center Loop to bring pedestrians to their destination. It is a significant out of direction of travel for pedestrians and bikes. It adds about 2.6 miles for those that want to get back to Beckman Road, and it's going to add about 40 to 50 minutes based on a kind of an average walking pace to get from East Wilsonville around this detour back to Beckman Road. There is one additional option for pedestrians, and this is something that could be messaged as well as the Beckman Creek Trail. Provides a little bit, I mean, it's a nice trail. We walked it to make sure that everything looked good. This would add about 1.2 miles to that route and would significantly decrease the delays, but it's not necessarily ADA accessible, and it's not a perfect route from a grade standpoint, but it's definitely an option for those able-bodied that are willing to use this route. And I think the alternative routes will provide, safe sidewalks and curbs than the current conditions on Beckman Road. Talk a little bit about bicycles. Again, it's very similar to the pedestrian routing, although the Beckman Trail is not an option for cyclists. And the bicycle route would be, again, Wilsonville Road to Town Center Loop to Canyon Creek. And there's existing bike lanes on Wilsonville Road. There's buffered bike lanes on Town Center Loop and bike lanes on Canyon Creek. So it will be a safe route during the duration of the construction traffic. It will add 2.6 miles of additional out-of-direction travel, and it will add about 13 to 16 minutes of travel time to cyclists that want to go from East Wilsonville to West Wilsonville or vice versa. I want to talk a little bit about school routes. So we have 3 schools on the east side of Wilsonville at the Meridian Creek Middle School, Beckman Creek Primary, and the high school. And we compared, we looked at all of the walking boundaries for those schools. And all the walking boundaries are actually on the east side of Beckman Creek. And so this closure really won't impact those that are walking and biking to school within that walking boundary. So the city will be working with it shouldn't impact the existing safe routes to those schools. But what we'll be working as a stakeholder, it will be impacting the school bus routes. And so we're going to want to make sure for the students that are bused west of Beckman Creek that we'll make sure it's clear of the routes, and that we'll have to work with the school district to modify their bus routes. So in summary, kind of the key takeaways, we're recommending a temporary traffic signal at Stafford Road and 65th Avenue. We'll be coordinating with Clackamas County and Washington County for the implementation of that temporary traffic control device. The travel times for passenger cars are going to increase between 1 to 7 minutes in the peak hours, depending on the origin and destination in the area. There should be minimal impacts to smart transit, and Nancy, Dominique, and city staff will continue coordinating with emergency services, the school district, and key stakeholders on the project as the project progresses. So with that, be happy to answer any questions. I
just have a question for Ms. Jacobson. We are going to have a vote, a motion and a second, and then discussion. Are we also open to discussing it now?
They can ask questions, right?
Okay, so we're just asking
before they enter discussion.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, you can ask, if you've got questions of staff, you can ask them now before. The discussion is really between the members, but if you've got clarification questions, feel free.
Do you have any, counselors, any clarification questions for staff at this point? And I think, is there a bit more to the staff presentation still to come? Okay.
Yeah, we'll just finish with our last slide. And if you have questions for Scott now, this would be a good time, or else you can wait till I finish.
Any questions for Scott? Not seeing any. Okay.
Yeah, Mayor Fitzgerald, if I could mention one other thing as far as the timing of this project. I think one of the important things to mention from a traffic standpoint is now is really the time. The faster the city gets this completed and the detour in place before, the more Frog Pond develops and the more houses are occupied in Frog Pond, the bigger the impact is going to be on the traffic side of things. So I just wanted to kind of mention that kind of time.
That's a very good point. Thank you.
So Nancy, I'll stop sharing, and
okay.
If you want to pull up your final slide.
All right, while she's doing that, I'll just mention again that tonight we are looking for your direction on our recommendations for the bridge design alternative and the full road closure detour option. The resolution before you would approve and adopt our staff recommendations. The next critical path for us will be working with finance to develop a funding strategy for the bridge. Right now, we have a known amount of, say, $14 or $15 million, and we probably have a gap of about $6.7 million approximately for the recommended design alternative. So we'll need to return to you with our finance director to present what we find for your consideration at a future council meeting. We may also return to discuss alternative project delivery approaches for the project. We're particularly looking at a progressive design build approach for this project because it's so complicated. And as you may recall, you have gone through alternative project delivery approaches when you approve the CMGC construction manager general contractor approach for the water treatment plant upgrade. So future key dates are fall and winter. We'll be completing the hydraulic study and giving you a recap of what the findings are for that. So we'll understand the impacts of taking out the culvert and redoing how the flows flow in that area. And then we'll also be completing the 30% design in that time period. And probably construction could start in the summer of 23 and then go through 24. A lot depends on how we coordinate with the other 3 projects in the area, which the signal will not be able to be turned on until the bridge is completed or the road is raised. And we also have a sewer line to put in on Beckman Road east of the dip. And then we need to make some infill road improvements to Beckman Road where there are missing sidewalks or bike lanes, et cetera, on Beckman to the east of the dip as well. One of the most important things for next steps will be public information. Depending on your decision tonight, if we go with a full road closure, there's just a ton of public outreach that needs to be done. We need to prepare all of our agency partners and the public for how we're going to deal with this situation and how to be successful in it. Then I think that concludes our little presentation. So if you have any questions of us, feel free to answer them.
Any clarifying questions?
Your Honor, I move to approve resolution.
Excuse me, Councilor West.
Yeah.
We do have a clarifying question.
Oh, you do? Sorry, then I'll wait.
Okay. Councilor Linville.
I just, maybe Nancy, you could just clarify or Dominique, just clarify, it looked like on the last slide that the timeline was designed fall, winter. Is that fall, winter of this year or of next year?
It would be this year, and that would just be through 30% design, and we need to do that to start our environmental permitting applications so that we know what the footprint is and what we're impacting in terms of the creek, how much creek, if there's wetlands, et cetera. So our 30% design will be completed in that time period. I wanted to just mention, though, that these dates can change because there's so many factors. So there's just always want to let everybody know that the dates we think are projected may change.
So I guess my question is, then what happens from fall, winter of 21, 22 to get all the way to summer of 23 before construction begins?
Well, there's a lot of time that we allow for the environmental permitting and right-of-way acquisition, easement acquisition, and then we need to go all the way to 100% design in that time period as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and it does take that long, especially with the complicated environmental situation we have with this project.
Okay.
Dominique, did you have anything to add?
You covered it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion on Resolution 2890?
Your Honor, I move to approve resolution number 2890.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Now, do we have any discussion, among the counselors? Counselor Linville.
Well, Your Honor, I think we've received some written testimony or written input from one of the homeowners that would be most significantly impacted by the temporary road, and they are in support of a full closure. And that decision would have the least effect on their property in terms of right-of-way acquisition and removal of trees on their property. So I think that is a significant issue as well as both cost and time in terms of the closure. I think at any rate we're going to have a closure, and I think the sooner we can get the project over with and get it completely done will be the safest for our community and the easiest. So I am in support of the resolution.
Thank you, Councilor Linville. Council President Argyle.
Thank you. I agree with Councilor Linville's comments there that the recommendation in the resolution, it really does seem to be the safest option, the quickest option. I do think that the quickest will also translate into money, as this is a very expensive project, and getting it done quicker will be advantageous for us in that regard. So I believe that those are important points, and I think that they are supported by the resolution that we have in front of us. I really appreciated staff's presentation, both in our work session and this evening at the council. And, you know, we all made some questions and comments during the work session, and I still stand by those and looking at how we can kind of lean into mitigating the inconvenience that the closure will cause. I appreciated to see the careful thought that is already going into the traffic, rerouting of traffic, and what does that mean for all of the different groups within Wilsonville, including our emergency response and schools and bike ped and things like that. And no, this won't be easy. But I appreciate the thought that is going in and the care that's going into trying to move through this as quick as we can and in a manner that is safe for everyone. So it seems like the right direction to go. And let's also keep in mind that at the end of all of this, we're going to have a bridge that's going to be a safer and the most direct option, right, for all of the different modes. And so let's get there. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor West, did you raise your hand?
Yeah. You know, what's funny is my son just got his permit, and so we've been doing some driving. I know it's terrifying, honestly. He's doing great, though, but you're much more aware of these unsafe roads in your community when you know your kid's going to be driving home from a football game or school, and that's the route he's going to take. And when you come up that, flying down or flying up that dip, and when you come up that dip and then you're all of a sudden at a stoplight, a four-way stop, and with the increased capacity as we develop out there, I think that this is absolutely a needed piece of infrastructure in the city. I was not comfortable one bit with the embankment. I think the creepy long tunnel was like the killer for me. Like, I was like, I don't see that happening. Just the only bad things happening with that long, dark tunnel. It sounds like a bad Johnny Cash song or something. But I really appreciate the work that you guys put into this presentation. It was really, really thorough. I think that you guys were really giving us broad perspectives, and then really helping us narrow it down to what would be not only safest, would minimize the pain points the least, and be the most practical, and while also providing that value that we really also want to see. So it had a little bit of all of that. So I really appreciate your guys' work. Nancy and Dominique and Scott, thank you very, very much. So yeah, I was happy to make the motion, and that's all I got to say about it.
Okay, well said. I think everybody made some really good points that I agree with. This is an important project. It's going to be maybe one of the flagship road improvements we make, because we are having, we know our city and neighborhoods are developing out there. We must have safe walking routes, biking routes, and of course driving routes. It's just a necessary thing. It's going to be hard to do. And I think about how people can get emotional about having their driving routes interrupted with detours. So if anybody has, I'm thinking of some way to psych ourselves into just getting used to this and calmly powering through the period of detour, because we will be rewarded with this road improvement that has been necessary for many years. We've heard about it from citizens for a long time, and we're now embarking on that period to start. So I'm also in favor of it. So having heard all of those comments, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Nancy, Dominique, and Scott. And we're now going to continuing business, and I've been advised of a request to continue to a date certain a public hearing for ordinances 847 and 848 relative to a comprehensive plan amendment and zone map amendment for Canyon Creek subdivision. And so I wanted to ask a question of the city manager and city attorney on some of the logistics around this. Are we still looking at a date certain of June 7th for that hearing?
No, what we're looking at doing, if you're open to a special meeting, this June 7th would be a regular meeting, and that would be the meeting we would do it at if you wanted to do this at a regular meeting. However, as you heard from earlier testimony, the DRB meeting went 6.5 hours because of all of the people who wanted to testify, along with the staff report and the applicant's statement. So the planning director has suggested that we, the appeal period for the DRB decision, if it happens on the 10th, which is when it has to happen, would be the 25th of May. And so the suggestion is to have the first reading at a special meeting on Thursday, May 27th, and then have the second reading on June 7, 2021, of course, depending on what happens if there is an appeal, which would give us a little bit of wiggle room. If something happened, we'd still have one more council meeting in June before our time frame on this land use application was completely expired. So what's been requested is a special hearing on May 27th with the second reading for the first reading, and the second reading being on June 7th. If council does not wish to do a special meeting, then the date certain would be June 7th for the first reading, and June, I think it's 21st, yeah, look, for the second one.
So let me just repeat that back. We could hold the date certain hearing on the first hearing on May 27th is one proposal, and the second would be on June What was the date in June, please?
So the first reading would be either on May 27th if you wanted to have a special meeting, or it would be at your regular meeting on June 7th. That would be for the first reading. The other option, if you elect to have the special meeting, then your second reading could be at that June 7th meeting, or if something happened, we would still have one more meeting in June to get it done. So if you didn't want a special meeting, your two meetings would be on June 7th and June 21st. If you wanted a special meeting, then it would be May 27th and June 7th or June 21st. Either one of those dates would work for the second reading.
Then May 24th, right?
Pardon me?
May 24th is what you meant.
May 27th.
Is that what Miranda suggested?
Yeah, because the appeal period doesn't expire until the 25th, I think, which is a Monday.
So that would be a Thursday.
And the 27th would be Thursday.
Okay.
So Council, Councilor Linville.
Well, I was just going to ask procedurally, Your Honor, if you're ready for a motion or if we need to have the city attorney read or if we have to do the public hearing. I'm happy to make a motion if we're ready for that.
Can I ask a question first, Barbara or Brian?
Sure.
Well, just a minute, please. So we just voted, or excuse me, we are, you're right, Councilor Linville. We need to vote on if we're going to have a date on it. And I was gathering information first from the city attorney. So I think now that we've heard this, Councilor Linville, if you would like to make a motion for one of the alternatives that Ms. Jacobson has presented, we can go from there and then discuss it after the second.
To be completely formal, if you want me to read it into the record, I didn't do that. You sort of read it in, but I can do that and ask for a continuance to date certain. Just so we can, then after that, Councilor Linville could make the motion. So on ordinance number 847 and 848, there is a request for a continuance to a date certain of the comprehensive plan amendment and zone map amendment for Canyon Creek subdivision. A special meeting has been suggested for May 27th for the first reading. And then the second reading would be on June 7, or in the alternative, you could have your first reading at your regular meeting on June 7, and your second reading at your next regular meeting, which I believe is June 21st. And this, of course, is all dependent on if there's an appeal and what happens there.
Councilor Linville. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I move to continue ordinance number 847 and ordinance 848 to a date certain of May 27th for the first reading, as for a special meeting on May 27th for first reading and June 7th for a second reading.
Do I have a second?
You or me?
Council President Ockerville.
I could second.
Any discussion?
I have a discussion too.
Please, Council.
Thank you. Yes, I will second this. I will also say, though, that I may have a conflict on the May 27th date. And there's, I mean, you all can carry on without me, I'm sure, and do good work. But of course, I'd like to try to be there when I can. And so I could try and meet or join the meeting at, at the later point when my other meeting is done. But I just wanted to be transparent with that, I guess.
Thank you. That's good information. On our discussion point, does anyone else have a date issue, which is something we can cover in this discussion period?
I wasn't super confident on the dates, but I think they'll be okay. But isn't that, it's a date to be, they're suggested? I was a little confused too on the dates. That's why my question was too, is that right now we're hoping the 27th and then the 7th of June, right? 27th of May, 7th of June.
Correct.
And the second option was the 7th of June and the 21st of June, right?
Correct.
The second option. But the meeting could go really long. Search, right? Yeah, I think I'm okay. I clarified that.
I mean, you could move the special meeting to a different day if the 26th worked better for Councilor Ackerval. The reason the 27th was selected was because the appeal period would end on the 25th of May, and it makes sense to have this after it, because at least then you know what direction you're heading. And then typically special meetings we've done on Thursdays, but if it worked better, you could do it on the 26th too. Or again.
What time would we do it? Would we start at 6 or 5?
You can start at whatever time you decide you want to.
Anything earlier than 6 for me would be tough. Even 6:30 is better because depending on the work day, if it's during the work week.
Yeah, I mean, you can start at 5 if you want.
Well, I think Councilor West is not available until more like 6 or 6:30, right?
Yeah.
So, Ms. Jacobson, in this motion, it actually listed 4 dates in the motion. If we are to, no, you just listed 2. Okay.
So if you're still discussing, you can always, the maker of the motion can always amend and the second can agree with that. I mean, if a different day works better for Councilor Ackerval and you want to suggest that, you can certainly do that, or you can leave it as is and, just be without her good guidance that night.
We don't know if Councilor Lehan's available, right?
We don't know that yet, and that's one question I was asking is, do we have to be absolutely decided on this during tonight's meeting, or can the motion be amended to say, to list these date options with maybe that doesn't work. I think we do have to decide. Yeah. Just let me know. We have to come to a decision.
You do, and you have a quorum present with the 3 of you. So, and hopefully Councilor Linville could be there, but I don't know, Councilor Ackerval, what that week is like for you. Maybe the whole week is not good.
Councilor Ackerval has more information for us, and we're happy to accommodate the schedule. We're going to work with it. Please go ahead.
Well, and I guess a question for staff, is there concern with joining a meeting that has already started? Because then I wouldn't have heard, I guess, the beginning of the information for that meeting. Is there concern with that? And then I want to also be sensitive to staff. Is there advantage to having a day in between the end of the appeal period and when council meets? I don't mean to commandeer the schedule for everyone. That's not my intention.
So for a clarifying question for staff, it sounds like the 26th could work.
Yeah, it could.
If we did it at 6:30 p.m. on the 26th.
And I'll just warn you that there are a lot of neighbors, so.
Was Councilor Ackerval's question, is there a downside to having it on a regular meeting schedule? Was that your question? Councilor Ackerval?
I guess my question was because I would not be able to be there at 6:30, and so if I joined when I could, is that a problem? Is that not?
I think it would be
because I wouldn't have heard the beginning.
You would miss out on some of the public testimony. Mm-hmm. I think it would be disadvantageous and probably not look good. So I would prefer we start a little later if you don't think you can get there at 6:30.
Yeah, and then it's going to be an extra long meeting. So it probably sounds like on the 26th would work better for me, or that I just would not be able to attend that first hearing.
So would the 26th work for you at the 6:30 time then? Yes?
It would work for me.
Okay, so.
Councilor Linville.
Your Honor, I'd like to amend my motion to change the date from May 27th for the first reading to May 26th for the first reading, and keep June 7th as the second reading.
Would the maker of the secondary motion agree, concur?
Yes, yeah, that's me, sorry. Yes, I'll second that amendment.
Thank you. Excuse me. We don't need more discussion, do we?
Well, I think
Maybe
Mr.
one.
West has a...
Okay, discussion, please, Councilor West.
So thinking about this too, just to make sure, and I think we'll still have a quorum, and I think I'm still okay to participate. I have received a phone call from one of the neighbors, and I don't know if they testified. I don't think I am compromised or not able to make a sound judgment, or be influenced by that. But I just want to make it just to be clear, I have to be real safe that somebody did call me out of the blue in the community to talk to me about this issue.
I think that's fine, Councilor West. If you get calls in the future, just tell them that this is going to be coming before you, and so that would be when they should present their comments. But if you feel like you've not been prejudiced, I think you're fine to go.
Would you still have to announce it, though, in the nature of the conversation?
You can announce that you had a call from a neighbor, but you didn't form any opinion based on the call, and you didn't offer any solutions. Okay. Yeah, so I think you're fine. I think Councilor Linville has a question.
Any other discussion? Councilor Linville.
Well, it seems to me that the only downside of that would be the possibility, I think, when during the public hearing, there's an opportunity for people to question any member of the council's participation. And so, I don't think there'd probably be a big issue unless that came up. But if we have a quorum, if we even have three of us there, I think there probably is fine.
Yeah,
as long as we can have a quorum, that's great.
Yeah, you will have it as long as the three of you are there.
Call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Are they voting on the amendment?
Aye.
Are they voting on the amendment?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Are we voting on the amendment?
All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand and say aye.
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 And all in favor of the motion, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. The amendment and motion passed 4-0.
So just to clarify, the hearing will be held, the first reading will be held on May 26th at 6 or 6:30?
6:30.
6:30, is that what you said?
Yes, 6:30 is what I heard.
Okay, and then the second reading on the 7th will be held at during the regular council meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, this concludes the formal portion of our meeting, and I'll now ask we'll move to city manager's business.
I have nothing tonight, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any legal business?
No, I think you've heard enough from me tonight.
I will adjourn the meeting of the Wilsonville City Council at 9:44 p.m.
Good night.